Kia ora, you're tuned into the Real Raglan Radio. What should we call this? Vlog session number 2. Good to catch up with our brother here, Wiri. We caught up last week. Did our first vlog session, and this is vlog session number 2. Good to have you back on the airwaves there, brother.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be back. And yeah, we had a great interview last week, talking a little bit about history and what we were doing back in the day, the 80s and 90s in Hamilton. And back for another session. So yeah, happy to be back on Raglan Community Radio.
No worries. Yeah, so for anybody that wants to tune in, www.raglanradio.com. Or check us out on Facebook, Real Raglan Radio. And our first vlog video session is going to be playing this Friday, 10 p.m. Tune in. So take the floor, really. I mean, we'll kickstart, and I'll let you, do your thing.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about awakening today, and what I mean by awakening is, we're kind of like educated throughout our life in a certain way, to think a certain way, and then you get to a certain point in your life where you realize that some of the things you have been learning are actually not true, and you're kind of like living in this lie in a way. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that, but more about also solutions as well, and how today's events going on in the world today through this crisis are impacting people on a psychological level. So I think in my last talk that we did last week, I talked about how around just after 9/11, I kind of had like my awakening. I was working, I was getting a lot of money through my taxi business, and then I kind of like was observing other people in life. I would see lots of homeless people, and I'd go, why can't they have the things I've got? And you start asking a lot of questions. And then when you start asking a lot of questions, you start doing your own investigation, your own research, which leads to other information and other research, and you start asking really exotic questions and big questions that the mainstream can't even answer, or people don't know. So it kind of puts you on this journey, and I think, I don't know how long, maybe a couple of years ago, I gave you a video of a couple of documentaries that I had been viewing, and how was those videos that I gave you, man?
Man, that video, that Zeitgeist video was a eye opener, put it that way. I watched it like 2 or 3 times just in that one night, and
Zeitgeist, the movie, right?
Yeah. So I guess for a person who's been, like you said in the beginning, there's people they taught things throughout their life, and I was definitely one of them. And then seeing that, it really, to be brutally honest, it actually did a little bit to me psychologically. Like in the first 6 months of just researching certain things, especially religion. Religion was one of the biggest things that I took a liking to, with just researching it. And I'm not, when I say psychological, I don't blow my brain to bits, but like it was sort of learning quite a few lies, man. That's probably the best way to put it. Lies about many aspects of my life, through religion, through even learning about Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. Like, come on, man. Hey,
I know those are the things I was saying that we've been brought up to believe, and obviously we find out no, those aren't true. And there are other things as well, that we are brought up to believe that things are this, but actually when you actually do research, they're not. And
exactly.
Yeah, so that Zeitgeist movie was one of your eye-opening movies, I guess, for your awakening.
They put me on my journey into another realm, and still does to this day. Like, I love researching different topics. Zeitgeist, man. Yeah.
So I can actually talk about that movie, and actually the movement that came about from the series of that movie. So the Zeitgeist movies, there's a trilogy. Now, the one you had, Zeitgeist 1, was actually, it wasn't part of the movement itself. It was just an expression of the creator at that time. When 9/11 happened, Peter Joseph, the creator of the Zeitgeist movie, saw how the world was, and he had his kind of awakening like how I did in a way. So he expressed it through his music that he played. And so he would do instrumentational performances, and then he'll play videos in the background. And the background would be about humanity, war, whatever his music was kind of expressing at that time. So he actually put it together into this film. So this film was actually derived from his art, and his art as a musician. And so the movie actually covered things like religion. It then moved into talking about 9/11, which are more problems about society. The last part talked about the monetary system and how that's impacted the world, and how it was introduced and how it was brought in by certain elitists and groups. And so that was really his kind of expression of how he felt at this particular time about humanity and his thoughts, and how he put it and portrayed it in his art form. And beautiful art form in terms of this movie. I mean, this movie got many accolades. It was one of the most viewed movies of all time on YouTube and on social media. And then from that, he then brought out a second movie called Zeitgeist Addendum. And what Zeitgeist means, it's a German word, and it means the current period and culture of this time. And so the current culture and period of this time basically is one, I would say, that is very masculine, based on, war, based on poverty, and it's not very good. The zeitgeist of this period of time is not very good. So that's what kind of zeitgeist means. So the second movie, Zeitgeist Addendum, was a little different. It did start off talking about money and how money mechanics is created, how money is created through the banking system, how you've got the fractional reserve banking and how that works. It then talked about economic hitmen and how people go into economies and countries to bring those countries down to gain resources and things like that, and resource acquisition, utility acquisition. And the last part in Zeitgeist Addendum was actually the part I really clicked with, and that was a solution to all of it. And the solution was brought together by this guy in the second movie. His name's Jacques Fresco, and he talked about a social system that does away with money, a world where you don't need to have money. And I was going, wow, this is, it really made me feel a bit more enlightened and real happy to see, actually. And I think that was the starting point of me to actually go, well, I need to advocate this. I need to promote this, because I think this is a possible solution. I mean, I'm not saying it is the only solution. So in that Zeitgeist Addendum, it did bring about a possible solution for humanity to look at. And then the third movie, which was Zeitgeist Moving Forward, that came out, and that actually talked about, okay, how will this new social system come about? How and why will we bring it out? What are the impacts of bringing out the system, and what are the impacts of the monetary system, psychological effects? So that movie talked about kind of like a transition, and what we can expect from a new social system. Because after doing all my research over the past 15 years, I've discovered that the environment we live in, which is based on this monetary system, is actually shaping and creating the behaviors that we see in society, and also it's shaping and creating the poverty you see and the crisis that you actually are seeing, because it's based on how much money you have. It's not based on, first and foremost, the resources that are available for us to do something. You saw that when they had the crisis in Italy of the outbreak of the corona. They didn't have any ventilators. So, a crisis of this nature, if you had a resource-based economy, you'd actually make sure that you'd have all those available without a price tag. But in this monetary system, it's about how much money first. I mean, you can't actually do anything unless you have money, so it's a restriction. And I'd like to talk about that in a future discussion. So these movies were actually a really good sort of springboard, especially for people that were kind of like getting into this kind of information. And not only that, but with an awakening like I did at that particular time. It was like, wow, this is kind of all timely. It kind of like all fit in to one another, you know. And so yeah, the Zeitgeist of Denim was like the pivot point for me to actually move forward and get into more activism to advocate this direction, which is a resource-based economic system. In fact, we brought over from America Jacques Fresco, the guy in the Zeitgeist of Denim. He'd done a couple of lectures here. We got him onto mainstream TV. He was on, I think it was TV1, Mark Sainsbury, and we got him some interviews, and I had time sitting down with him. And wow. Brilliant mind. He was actually friends with Einstein, and he kind of was like a mentor to me, you know. He, you know, kind of, I had my own thoughts about life and about things, but he kind of made my lens a little bit more clearer so that I could understand actually the things I was thinking about became really clear. And he worked on a lot of inventions too. So he helped develop aircraft and done a lot of stuff with the military and all sorts of things. Jacques Fresco. He passed away at 102, about 102 years old, a couple of years ago. So I'll talk about that in another project, and about the project that he actually created and wants to implement throughout the world, which is totally different to what we're actually seeing right now happening in terms of the social credit, super surveillance, super artificial intelligence system that is going to be implemented. So that's one system. The system that he advocates, which is a resource-based economy, is a totally different system, and it's transparent. It's a transparent system. So I like to talk about that in a future discussion. And so those were my thoughts with the movies. I mean, yeah. So the first movie is kind of like his expression on how he felt at the time, and it's actually not related to the movement itself. The movement itself is more an advocation of a resource-based economic model. And yeah, I'd like to talk about that at another time. And so yeah, this awakening from the, I would say, psychological intergenerational program. So when people go, what do you mean awakening? Awakening from what? Awakening from a sleep? Well, kind of. To me, it's like a psychological intergenerational program. What do I mean by that? I mean, we have been enforced, you know, from birth to accept a certain way of life. Our parents have made decisions on our behalf because we were babies. We couldn't make those decisions. It's the same with them. When they were babies, their parents made decisions on their behalf when they were born, and so on and so on. And so this is how this intergenerational programming starts. And so you're actually born into the system. You're born into this, I would call, matrix as an analogy. And so I call it psychological intergenerational program. And it's happened for quite a while now, you know, especially back in countries like New Zealand, especially from the time of colonization. And, you know, I started asking a lot of those questions back then, and actually started trying to connect the dots and, you know, trying to actually clear my mind to actually see what was actually going on and what was happening. And I guess that's how you had your awakening too, and maybe developed a little bit more. And did you view more documentaries?
Yeah, man, it's non-stop. I'm actually watching a documentary. Well, it's a vlog series. It sort of parallels with what you're talking about the resource. What was it again? The Jacques
resource-based economy.
Yeah. I'm actually watching a little vlog series with DJ Vlad. He's interviewing Akon right now, and he's looking at building his own city within Senegal.
Yeah, I see that. I see that now. Amazing.
He's gonna have no money. Well, it is going to have money, but it's not going to be like the money that they're using from the French. So anyway, yeah, to check it out, bro. It's but anyway, just getting back into the stuff that I did research is a ongoing research from the Zeitgeist was definitely David Icke. He was definitely a huge person that I love watching, still love watching to this day.
Funny
He
you
was
say
ruthless.
that. They had a massive protest in London the other day, and he guest spoke on there to the crowd. I think there was like over 100,000, 200,000 people in London that came out
Wow.
again. They were anti-lockdown, and he came out there, and he had an amazing speech, talking about the virus. I call it the boogeyman virus, but I think it's a
The boogie.
massive, it's a massive change from when he was on the Wogan show back in the 80s. And back in the
Man,
80s, he got ridiculed when he was on that show, and the
bad,
host would say
bad.
to him, they're laughing, they're not laughing with you, they're laughing at you. And so even the host was a ridiculer. And, it's a totally different scene now today with all these millions of people waking up. And that's what I'm saying. People are waking up to what's actually been going on. But what's been going on has happened intergenerationally over time. And it's really intricate. We can't go into all of it at this moment because, you're just talking about maybe 1% of this whole massive story. It's a story of humanity in a way. And it goes back in history too. There's a huge, massive, massive, I would call whakapapa in Māori, which is a genealogy. So there's a massive genealogy of this history that goes back in time. And it even goes back in time with different indigenous cultures, how they talk about the same thing. And if you reference with the Mayan prophecies as well, I talked to a friend, Poppy. She's a Mayan prophecy practitioner, and she talked to me about some of the Mayan calendar stuff and what's going on with the Hopi and what they also believed. And it's in sync with what's going on right now. They believed back then that humanity is going to go through an awakening period because we've been in a period what they call the time of the great forgetting, where we would forget our connection to one another, would forget our connection to ourselves, we'd forget our connection to nature. But it was actually part of our consciousness evolution. And it's to do also with our connection with what's going on in the galaxy and our solar system. And actually I'll bring up a picture of it here. So I'm not sure if you can see it, but basically what it's got is the galactic plane. It's the spiral, the spiral of the galaxy. So our solar system moves up and down throughout that spiral. So it's like a disc. So our galaxy moves up and down over millions of years, a period of time. And so the closer we get back to the center of that spiral, where that spiral is, the more connected we become. The further we move away from that spiral, the more disconnected we are from one another, disconnected from nature. So it's part of our consciousness evolution. And you got people like Greg Braden, and you got other people that are talking about exactly this information. And it's really, really detrimental that people understand what we're actually going through is a consciousness evolution and a shift in our conscious thinking. But not only that, a conscious thinking of realizing who and what we really are. And I'll talk a little bit about that shortly. So I'm just putting a picture out there to show people how the solar system moves through the central galactic plane. And the center of the actual galactic plane is what they call pure consciousness. So the more we move back to that source, the more we become connected. So that's what's actually happening. So what you're seeing now are the systems around the world actually being falling apart. Our way of living is slowly falling apart. Our means of living is falling apart because those are fake. Those are illusions. So all the illusions are actually falling apart. And people are now in the high levels of the elites, and that are trying to hold it together. And so that's why you're getting great revealings happening now. Things like pedophilia that's going on, and all the nastiness that's going on in Hollywood, and it's because those are all breaking down on a consciousness level. And it sounds unbelievable, but when you actually look at it in a more perspective view, and you get a more open your perceptions more, you can actually take it more, and you can see and connect more dots. You can see how that actually coincides with what's going on in society right now. And so the falling
Hey, bro, I've got a quick question for you. Sorry to stop you, but
Yeah, man.
do do you think it'll be harder for a society or even a person to fathom what you just spoke about the elites and pedophilia and everything being revealed if they're still in that state of mind of that psychological prison that they're in? You know what I mean? As opposed to people like us who can connect the dots and see it. Like, do you think that the people who are still stuck in the
Yes.
paradigm of this is how the world is, like they can't make sense of that because how could you when you're stuck there?
Yeah.
Like you just see it as a crime, pedophilia and everything else that comes with it. They'll just think it's all hogwash when it comes to the 1% elite. They're a bit
It's because of the way that they've been educated, the way that they have become subservient. As I said, it goes back to that psychological intergenerational programming where you're born into it. You've taken from a young age, you put into school, you learn what the school curriculum tells you to think and how to think. And then from there, you only think within that certain perceptive view. If you think outside that perceptive view, that's all nullified because you have to think within that perceptive view and you get rewarded for thinking within that view. They call it grades, and with grades you get rewards. You move up the levels when you go to university, you get degrees. If you get good degrees, you get rewarded with more money, and so your perceptions are actually programmed for you to think within that sphere. I call it fishbowl mentality. You only think within the fishbowl. And a lot of people are in that at the moment because it's the way that they know, the way that they've been brought up, and that's what I'm saying. So the awakening is awakening from that realization of that perspective you're in, and awakening to actually open up your perceptions. It's a perception thing, and I mean, you can talk about the current crisis and how that's playing out right now, and how that relates to our awakening that's happening now too. I mean, you've got things like this, I call it the tiptoe style, which governments are actually doing right now, like surveillance. You know, they've implemented surveillance now that in New Zealand, I'll just bring up an article, police are setting up a $9 million facial recognition system now which can identify people from CCTV feeds. And then people are going, oh, but they got masks on. Yes, they got masks on now, but once this is fully implemented and they say to you, okay, you don't need masks, people go, yeah, we don't need masks anymore, we don't, take those off. This is already going to be in place, face recognition system. So I'm bringing those up at the moment to show people, and this kind of is relative to what I'm speaking about. So there's that, which is what we call surveillance capitalism, and surveillance capitalism shows how the use of AI algorithms capturing people's personal data, it's actually called residual data, and how that data is easily used to determine the way the masses perceive reality, and also how the data can be used to predict scenarios using special data sets, and face recognition, which is super artificial intelligence implementation. So all those things are utilized to actually look at the human psychology, and then if you can control that human psychology, you can control the way in which people can perceive. And if you control the way people perceive, you can control people's behaviors. So this is how this psychological thing is happening to humanity right now. And I will say right now, humanity is going through what I call a cognitive dissonant moment. Cognitive dissonance, if you're not sure what that is, it's basically, and I brought up a meaning of it. It says cognitive dissonance refers to a situation involving conflicting attitudes, beliefs, or behaviors. This produces a feeling of mental discomfort, leading to an alteration in one of the attitudes, beliefs, or behaviors to reduce the discomfort and restore balance. So basically, you've been educated a certain way throughout your life. When you come into new information that conflicts with the information you've actually been indoctrinated with, you get a discomfort, a mental discomfort, and you react to it, or you get angry to it, you get frustrated, you go through all this emotional turmoil. And I think that's what a lot of people are going through right now with this crisis, is cognitive dissonance, and it's a mental state. And sometimes people commit suicide from it because they can't handle what's going on. So you're seeing a lot of the mental issues happening in society now through the lockdowns, because people are going into these conflicting states, because people, used to have a normal life, go to work, earn some money. Now they can't, or they got a business and their business was flourishing. Now it's closed because of lockdown. They're losing money. They may be still paying rent even though they're not open. And so they go back to their job, or they go back to their work. They kind of got in this conflicting state. Oh, how am I going to survive? I've got families to feed. So they, and it puts them into the state of psychological trauma, I like to call it. And a lot of it is because people are fearful, and they're fearful of the unknown. How am I going to pay my bills next week? How am I going to feed my family? And that then creates people to create some paranoia, stress, their fear of loss of job, their fear of loss of income. How am I going to, support my family? And it actually moves people into a state of dependence. So then they look back to the government. The government will give you our handouts. Oh, yes, I need that handout. So it's getting people into this dependent state, and mentally in a state of what I call robotic compliance. Robotic compliance means that you robotically comply without question. And I think humanity is in a stage at the moment. And it's fear-induced, which leads to subservience. So I think at the moment there's a whole lot of psychological thing going on with humanity at the moment. And what I'm seeing now is that cognitive dissonance is making people become what I call self-appointed guardians of the status quo. So they're protecting the people that are creating this a problem for them. Do you know what I mean? They're protecting the people that are, example, taking away their jobs. They're protecting the people that are putting them into an imprisoned lockdown. And it's this cognitive dissonance that people are trying to overcome at the moment. And so this is one of the real important things why I wanted to talk about the awakening, is to awaken from that mentality state that we are in. And there's other things involved too, which are quite detrimental to helping people stay in that state. There are things called psychological operations, or they call them psych ops. I don't know if you heard about psych ops, but psych ops are basically, I'll try and bring up a thing about that. So psych ops are operations to convey selected information and indicators to audiences to influence their emotions, motives, and objective reasoning, and ultimately the behavior of governments, organizations, groups, and individuals. So basically it's a form of, you could say, psychological warfare on the human being, on people, and influencing people to a place where they don't even realize they've been influenced.
Exactly. I was going to say brainwashed.
Yeah, brainwashed. And I've been doing a lot of that kind of research a while. There's a guy called Darren Brown. He's a psychologist, and he does a lot of experiments on psychology, and it's all based on science, and it's not based on some superstition or hairy-fairy thing. And he even did it where he actually got a guy. He didn't even tell the guy this, but he got a guy to actually pick up a gun in a theater and shoot someone. But he actually laid out all these different psychological steps for the guy to do before he actually did it. But he never told the guy to actually point the gun. He actually got the guy he actually rang the guy on a phone, and as soon as he heard Darren's voice, the guy got into a psychological state to actually assassinate someone. And so it proved that the human psychology is quite vulnerable if you know how to take advantage of people, and without people realizing, all the subliminalities that come from it, the subliminal stuff that comes from it. It's conveyed to people in a way that they don't really understand. And they haven't got time to understand it because people are working. People are stuck in survival mode. They haven't got time to research. So who do they look for? They look to the mainstream media to do the research for them. And who controls the mainstream media? That's something in itself now. Back in New Zealand, what's the mainstream media like in New Zealand?
As I said before, I very rarely listen to any media these days. It's from a notable source. put it that way. and even then, I'm still a little bit skeptical. Like, it's interesting. As you well know, with media and that. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I think back in New Zealand, and I think around the world too, there seems to be like a massive smearing by the mainstream media by calling critical thinkers conspiracy theorists, especially back in New
100%.
Zealand now, leading up to the elections, because there are a lot of people now who are questioning the lockdowns, questioning the procedures in which the government have been taking to introduce the lockdowns and to introduce the Russian laws, the Russian acts that they're now imposing and restricting onto the people. So that people are questioning those, but those people that are questioning them are now being smeared as conspiracy theorists by the mainstream media, and obviously the government have paid off the media because they bailed them out with, I think, $50 million. The New Zealand media, example, got paid huge amounts of money to actually be subservient to the ones who provided that money to them. And so if you control information, this is what I want to get back to people. If you can control information, you can control people's perceptions. If you can control people's perceptions, you can control people's behaviors. So when you look at the human being, we are, I believe, transmitters and receivers. So we transmit information, we receive information. You know, we do that orally, we do that visually.
Yeah.
So we are like information transmitters and receivers. And so when we receive our information, whether it comes, through the internet, whether it comes from reading a book, it then shapes our perceptions in the way in which we think psychologically. And then those perceptions then shape our behaviors, how we are out in the real world, how we act in the real world, and how we connect with one another in relationships out in the real world. And what I wanted to, point out was that whoever controls information, controls perceptions, and ultimately controls people's behaviors. So where have the majority of people's information come from? Where does it come from? Google. Exactly. So internet, Google, YouTube, that kind of thing. And who are the ones that actually own those? So these are the questions that, people, I ask the people for them to be the judge of. I'm not going into any conspiracies or anything like that. But what I'm putting out there is information for people to go and do the research themselves, and for people to actually be the judge. They be the judge. I'm just putting out there the seeds for people, or throwing out the arrows. It's that direction. You go check it out.
So it's funny you bring that up, but I can't remember which doc I was watching. I was watching something anyway, and they spoke about that. They spoke about I think they may even be taking Google to court. I'll try and figure out where I found it. But anyway, they're pretty much talking about pretty much exactly everything that you just said about the information, who controls all the information, and whether the information be true or not, or it's being tainted to some degree. It's still what did you call it? It's mind controlling. Is pretty much what they're saying.
This is a war on our perceptions, on taking over the human perception and the human way of how we are thinking out there.
Yeah.
Because human beings are vulnerable in that form. And so going back to that, who controls the information controls perceptions, and if you can control perceptions, you can ultimately control people's behaviors. And that's scientifically proven, and people can go and check that out forever they want, and I also wanted to talk about another thing too, is attachments to labels. I mean, we saw that with, the Black Lives Matter thing, I'm black and you're white, and labels is another way in which division has been created. I mean, even my name is a label. Even me saying I'm a Māori is a label. Those are actually our experiences, Wiri is having an experience here as a Māori. That is not actually me. I believe I'm an infinite conscious being. That's who I ultimately am. I'm here experiencing this reality as Wiri Tamoni, I'm experiencing this skin as brown skin. So and so is experiencing their skin and white skin. So and so, these are just labels. And I think what's happened is that those labels have been used to play off against one another for the benefit of those that know how to actually benefit off that. And I think that's how it's happened throughout history. And so because people have attached themselves to labels, not realizing, and it's a realization thing, who and what they are. If you realize who and what you are, you will find that it's just a label. And you actually move beyond that. You move beyond the labels. You move to more of a more connected consciousness way of thinking, like how I am. I'm at this connected consciousness way of thinking now, beyond my label. Even beyond how I look. Even though this is a body, but it's just me experiencing this reality world around me. And I think a lot of people need to realize that too. Yes, you're Dallas, you've got your brown skin, you are Maori, that's your experience. You are experiencing a Maori at this time on this planet. And if we actually attach ourselves to those labels, we think we're the label, we're actually not the label. But if we think we are the label, then that's how they can psychologically get us, and that's how we actually become subservient to that division. And that's, and solutions will not come from a place of divided labels where the human majority think that they are that label. Solutions will come from a place of knowing who and what we really are individually, but also collectively. And that is where the true power lies for us as a human species, beyond the illusion of the labels. And I think David Icke calls them the I ams. I am Irish. I am a New Zealander. I am a... So
it's real funny you bring up the labels straight away. It reminded me of a conversation that I heard John Lennon speak about. He actually spoke about, imagine if there was no countries in the world, or no flags.
Yes.
So there was no borders. So you could just cruise into that. When I first heard that, I was like, man, that's quite a genius way to think. To have that mindset back, when was that? I think it was in the 60s, 70s.
Yeah, 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
He was onto it, man, old John Lennon. And that's the exact same thinking. I mean, borders, if you even look at borders are just an illusion. I mean, I'm here in Vietnam. North of Vietnam is China, so there's a border. But a bird from Vietnam doesn't go, I need to go and get my visa before I fly into China, does it? No, it's just humans' illusionary way of saying, this is a border. And borders, I'll tell you what borders are. Borders really are put in place to stop other countries saying that this is their resource. No, this is my resource. These are mine. Yeah. This is mine. If you want them, you need to trade. You need to buy. So we've gone into that state of hoarding. We've gone into that state of non-sharing. We only share through trade. And, it's based on conditions. It's conditional. And this is the world we are living in. So all illusions, all borders are illusions. They're just a human illusion, borders. As I said, nature doesn't have borders. There is no borders in nature.
No way.
And this is what I wanted to talk about in another talk about what a resource-based economy is, because it does away with borders. It does away. It's the concept of a resource-based economy just sort of really woke me up to the realization, man, that's where we need to be. That's where we need to be. Because the thing I got from it is that when you have borders, you're closed off not only from people, but you're closed off from seeing other parts of the world, and you need to get what they call visas, or you need a passport. And so your perceptions are sort of still enclosed because you're not seeing other. I mean, I've traveled to like over 40 countries now. I've seen beautiful landscapes, and that's really opened my mind up, and I've seen cultures, and I've seen people's way of living, and it's got me to actually think more diversely, and I've become more of a generalist and acceptance of other people and what they are experiencing. They're just experiencing what they're going through. And so, it's not like you read about it. You're actually I'm actually there in that country doing it, and I highly recommend people, if they get the chance, is to travel. But beyond that, it's like, for me, it was for my own research and for my own, like, I would say, knowledge to accumulate, to see other countries. And I think that's what I'm talking about. And borders in itself are just illusions. And I hope one day their borders can be done away with, and that the world actually comes together as one global family. And I'll give you an analogy, and it may sound kind of funny, this analogy, but imagine this. I'm a Māori. There's a Māori, a European, and let's say Chinese. And we all jump on a spaceship and we go and travel to another civilization in the future. And we come to their planet and we meet them, and they say to us, "Oh, hello, where are you from?" I'm not going to say I'm from New Zealand, he's from China, and he's from England. I'm going to say, no, we are from Earth. This is where our planet is. Humanity isn't at that point yet. Humanity is still stuck in the nationalistic consciousness at the moment. They're not stuck in the global consciousness at the moment. And I'm hoping through this awakening that humanity will actually get to the point where our thinking will be more global, and start thinking more about our planet and ourselves together as one civilization. We're not at that point yet. We're still fighting with one another. We're still wars. We're blaming China. We're blaming America. We're blaming this. We're blaming that. So humanity is going through a teething stage, I would call it.
Yeah.
So that's my observation.
Would it be fair, bro, to say that, in your opinion, that you've seen a lot more people awaken, maybe in the last 5 to 10 years?
Yes.
Maybe even the last 5 years.
Yes.
Maybe in the last 5 years.
In the last 5 years. Well, funny you say that. 2012, they said, was like the pivoting point where awakening would actually start increasing. And it certainly has over the past 5 years. I mean, you look back 7 years. So I think from that point onwards, 2012, there have been a lot of people that have been woken up. I mean, I talked about a lot of exotic topics back on the radio show in Hamilton Community Radio, me and Rawiri, and even the station manager would laugh at me and go, "You're crazy. What do you mean? What do you mean there's a global elite and a new world order? What is a new world order? What?" He was laughing at me back then, but he actually, I think he believed that, he put us on the station to make a laughing stock out of us, but actually it woke up a lot of people, and now it's coming to fruition, so it kind of backfired on him. So I wouldn't be surprised he's changed his mindset too, but everyone's on their own different awakening journey at the moment, and I'm not imposing people to wake up right now and do as I say, and that do it themselves and do it in their own time. And if they don't want to, that's fine. It's their life. It's their choice to do it. I think my job is just laying the seeds out of what I know and how I can help benefit people, and on a collective conscious level, and for the betterment of the good. I'm there for the betterment of the good, just like Neo, just like the Jedi. I think I'm just there to help everyone for the betterment of the good. And I feel confident in doing it too, bro. So I'm hoping to do some more of these talks in the future, and definitely talk about a resource-based economy, because I think that is the point. I think humanity will transcend. That will be the leap that once humanity gets to a resource-based economy, I think humanity will leap into the universe, bro. I'll tell you what, because I mean, I can roughly talk about a resource-based economy. Actually, I've got a video that I'll play. I'm not sure if you can hear it, but I'll play it anyway, so that people can actually see and compare between a monetary system and a resource-based economy. And I think in the next talk, it'll be good maybe that I could talk a bit more about it. So let me just play this video. It's like 3 minutes. I'm hoping you can hear it, but if not, all good. So let's start this.
A resource-based economy versus today's monetary system. In a RBE, all of the Earth's resources are declared as the common heritage of all the world's people. Whereas in today's monetary system, the world's resources are owned and controlled by a few nations, bankers, and corporations. In a RBE, all goods and services are abundantly available to everyone without the need for means of exchange like money, credits, barter, and so on. But today most goods and services are kept artificially scarce for most of the world's people with the use of debt-based currency. In a RBE, we utilize the most current technological and scientific advances to provide the highest possible standard of living for all people on Earth. Yet today, your standard of living completely depends on your purchasing power, leaving billions of people in extreme poverty. In a RBE, we develop and only use clean renewable energy sources. However, today, we fight over fossil fuels polluting the world and each other. A RBE is in alignment with the scientific method, making it open to falsification, also known as an emergent system that embraces change. However, today's monetary game is an established capitalistic system in alignment with profit, politics, poverty, and war. In a RBE, we embrace automation to free people from boring and repetitive work. Whereas today, automation is primarily used to make more money for corporations at the expense of most people eventually losing their job and thus income in order to survive. A RBE will create new city environments that reinforce altruism, problem-solving, cooperation, compassion, unity, curiosity, creativity, and other extensional behavioral traits. On the other hand, today's socioeconomic structure predominantly reinforces greed, selfishness, competition, war, vanity, hate, fear, and other types of predatory behavior. With the intelligent management of the Earth's resources, production and distribution of resources in a RBE are operated in the most effective and sustainable manner technically possible in a state known as dynamic equilibrium. On the contrary, efficiency, sustainability, and preservation are the enemies of today's economic system. In a resource-based economy, we are one sustainable family. In today's monetary system, we either continue killing each other on a path towards extinction, or we build a world where we are one sustainable family. To understand more about what a resource-based economy is, check out thevenusproject.com.
Cool, bro.
So yeah, there we have the video about a resource-based economy that I just played. So hopefully that it's kind of going to be like a thinking point for people to like go, wow, what's a resource-based economy? So I'd like to in the future talk about a resource-based economy. I mean, I can give people like a really short version of what it is right now. If you can,
yeah, please, bro.
It's basically a transparent system updated to present day knowledge that in short has all goods and services available without the price of money, without exchange, without barter, without credit or any type of means. And for this to be achieved, all the resources need to be declared as the human heritage of all the Earth's people. And it's going to be equipped with the latest scientific and technological marvels. Mankind could reach extremely high productivity levels and create abundance and resources. And a resource-based economy concerns itself with three main things: the environment, technology, and human well-being and our health. Those are the main things. So in reality, it's like, imagine a system, bro, where you don't need money anymore. You don't need to hoard resources anymore. You have access to resources, much like a library these days. You go to a library, you borrow a book, you take the book back. And a resource-based economy is similar to that. So that eliminates the reward mechanism in the system. So there's a reward mechanism in the monetary system. People get rewarded for corruption. They get rewarded for their behaviors. They get rewarded for doing things like taking advantage of vulnerable people. So in a resource-based economy, there is no reward like that. The reward is that you have access to the necessities of life. You have a house, you have a car, And people go, well, what will people do then? You won't even have to work, actually, because machines will do maybe 95% of the work. So people won't have to work in a resource-based economy. Instead, people will actually spend time in doing their own passions, creating, exploring, recreation, family time, arts, research and development, a whole bunch of different things. I mean, when you look at society today, bro, majority of humanity is stuck in, if you look at Maslow's pyramid of hierarchical needs, people are stuck in the bottom two levels, which is survival mode. And survival mode is trying to make money to buy food, shelter, clothing. So we're stuck in those two levels. Yet the top three levels, which are things like self-actualization, self-development, knowledge, we don't spend much time in those because A, we don't have time, B, we don't have money. And so what a resource-based economy does, it eliminates the bottom two levels, the survival mode. Gone. So the top three levels are then for people to focus on. They can focus on their passions, they can focus on stuff they love doing, whether you want to be an artist, whether you want to be a DJ. And yes, in the system you're going to be doing work, but it's voluntary. It's based on voluntarism. And voluntarism is a huge thing worldwide. We've seen it everywhere. Even when we go back to our marae, Māori, go back to the marae. You get in the kitchen, you peel those potatoes or whatever. You know what I mean? It's the same thing on a global scale. So in the future talk, I'd like to talk a lot about that and how it can be implemented, how questions like, is it communism? I'll answer those. And things like overpopulation. How will that happen with overpopulation? So I'll talk a lot about that kind of thing as well. And this is a possible solution. I'm not saying it is the only solution, but it is a possible solution. And I'd love humanity to be at this point where we are in a system like a resource-based economic system, and it's transparent. That's the thing. Everyone can see what's going on with it. There's no hidden agendas. There's no secrecy going on. And that's the beautiful thing about this resource-based economic model. And it's just a possible solution. As I said, it's not... People go, oh, it's a utopia. And no, there is...
I was trying to find the word for it because I was like, man, that sounds like heaven.
Yeah.
Not to have to work and no stresses. So
these are the questions.
No mortgage.
These are no mortgage, and in fact, there's going to be no police. There will be no police needed in a system like this. No prisons, no marketing, no advertising. Those things gone off the face of the earth. You don't need any of that shit. And I get asked that question a lot. Is this a utopia? And I'll tell people now, there is no such thing as a utopia. Everything is in a state of change all the time. Everything changes all the time. There's no best laptop. Next year, there'll be a laptop that's smaller, faster, more capable of doing the work than what the laptops of today can do. Same with the system, resource-based economy. The kids of the future will develop a system that's even better than a resource-based economic model. So there is no utopias. There is no finalities, especially in our way of thinking and accumulating knowledge. And I'll tell people this: if people can accept change, we call it emergence. Emergence is where you accept change, new information. So you update your information, like your beliefs. But people don't like updating their beliefs because they've been indoctrinated. Oh, I've learned that since, I've learned that when I went to church. I'm not going to change that. Or I've learned that when I went to school. I'm not going to change. But this is how the universe works. We have to update ourselves to present day knowledge, to how new things that we learn come to us. We do new experiments, so we learn new things about our science. We learn all this new information about the universe, about, atoms and everything like that. So we need to update our information. We call it emergence. So a resource-based economy is an emergent system. So it's adapted to the knowledge at the particular time. So it's updated to the technology, to the knowledge at the particular time. And I want to talk a little bit in the future talk about technology too, and how people fear technology. Technology is just an extension of human attributes. It's just an extension of ourselves. And it's not the technology that's created the problems in this system, monetary system. It's the way in which technology has been used and abused. in the system that gets people to fear it. That's where it comes from. It's the abuse that technology has been used and abused that has given us this fear and created this fear. I mean, are we going to say that I'm scared of our washing machine? You know, am I scared of my dryer? Anyway, so I'll talk a lot about that because those are questions I get asked about all the time, bro. And I think maybe I'll just leave with people my thoughts that, real change will come once humanity wakes up and realizes we are not the color of our skin, we are not a label. Those are just our experiences. We are more than that. And if people start non-participating in the system because it's starting to actually crumble, the socioeconomic system starting to crumble, and you will see some true changes. And until then, if people don't, you will see more of the same. You will see what's going on, and it'll be like a cycle. People will see more of the draconian laws coming in. So I just leave that with people. It's actually time to wake up, awaken from the program, the psychological and intergenerational program. So
I hear you, man. I definitely hear you.
And if people want to check out more of what I'm talking about, I have a couple of Facebook pages. The first one is my You Be the Judge Facebook group, and then I've got a page. It's called You Be the Judge World on Facebook, and then a YouTube channel which is You Be the Judge World. So they can go to there and check out some of these podcast talks and some of the information that I put up with some of the other groups of people that I've collaborated with as well. And I'm hoping to do some more in the future, bro.
No worries. Definitely looking forward to it. Hey, you touched on something that I really I'll talk to you off camera, and that was to do with the different cultures around the world,
yes.
on how they see this whole thing happening. So I'd be really keen. I've actually done a little bit of research on that myself as well. So it'd be cool to talk about that. There's some good there. So anyway, bro, mean to have you in the building again. Always a pleasure to have you in there. This is vlog number 2. Crikeys.
Getting into it.
Could you also send me all the links to your Facebook pages? Because I'll
man,
chuck those on our website.
Sure.
When we showcase the first one this Friday. So yeah.
All good in the hood. Thank you, man. It's been awesome.
Awesome, bro. We'll talk again soon.
All good. Thank you, bro.
Awesome, brother.